When we keeping it real, we're talking about that idea of not taking shit from anybody. I guess that's part of it, right? I think there's other components.
Before we even talk about this, what do you define keeping it real as?
So when people talk about, oh, I'm gonna keep it real, what I usually hear is I'm tired of containing or controlling my emotional reaction to something. It's funny because it never actually denotes telling the truth. I mean, maybe it does in terms of like, here's what I actually think about this situation. But it's never an impetuous like, I was telling this white lie to this guy about how his pants looked, and now I'm gonna just let him know it looks like trash. It's never that kind of thing. It's always like, yo, I'm tired of people treating me like garbage. I'm going to let them know how I feel, and I want to do it with my whole chest. And I'm going to get in their face and yell at somebody and freak them out and show them I don't want to be trifled with. That's usually what I hear, right? That's what I think people are talking about when they talk about keeping it real. And of course, that always goes wrong.
And I know there are people who keep it real in the ways where if your breath stinks, they're like, hey, bro, your breath.
Okay, right.
And there's different levels of keeping it real. But when we talk about like containing your emotions, keeping it real is used as a way to get the tiger out the cage.
Yeah, I always say there's no worse excuse for casual cruelty than unopinionated or unsolicited honesty, and I think people use that a lot. Like for example, let's talk about that breath thing for a minute, because like you're the homie. If I show up and I smell like something died in my mouth, I would expect you to tell me. What I would not expect you to do is tell me publicly in front of a bunch of people, where it's clear the goal is to humiliate or belittle my position.
Because friends are supposed to like ride with you in public and keep it real with you in private. So
right. And I actually don't even necessarily believe that to that degree, like at least not to the point where I'm gonna look like a jackass, and we can get into that. But the difference between like keeping it real colloquially, as it's used anyhow, and helping a friend out is really, are you doing it to help? So in that case you correct them in private, or at the very least you correct them as unembarrassingly as you can, if that's even a word, as possible, versus I'm going to go out of my way to make sure people know you got a problem and I have a problem with it.
I think there's a big problem in the idea that it's no longer okay to be wrong.
What do you mean by that? Let me break that down.
So with the idea of everything being online, like if you have an opinion and you tweet it in 2015, they're going to hold you to that opinion in 2022. So instead of people saying, oh yeah, I tweeted that in 2015, I take full accountability. That's how I felt at the time. But then actually I met people of different cultures and backgrounds. And then I realized, ooh, that's probably not the best version of myself, but I didn't get around to deleting that. No, what we do is it's an attacking game. So instead of we address it and just acknowledge what we did and move on, but we're using it to cancel each other now. So we can't admit to anything because then we'll get canceled.
Yeah. And here's cancel culture has got a lot of problems. But in my opinion, the biggest meta problem with this whole approach, right? Where, 2015, what is it? That's 7 years ago at this point. Okay. Almost 7 years, depending on what part of 2022 or 2015 it's in. But you can't go you can't say something ridiculous that you thought was serious, you thought was funny and humor, right? And then later on, people they weaponize it against you. And here's the thing about weaponizing a thing. You have decided how it's going to be used, and you're going to use it as a weapon. That means it no longer can be used as a teaching tool or a corrective measure. Now it is only used to attack. And once you turn it into that, now the other person is forced to do one or two things, usually both: defend or retaliate. And when you retaliate, now you've got a war, you've got a battle. No one can learn. We're too busy trying to rip each other down. If I say something ridiculous against a poor group of people or make a joke that is not cool to make anymore, right? I'm not even going to get into the progression of what is socially acceptable. Let's just say that I make a joke about a group of people in, we'll say 2015. In 2022, someone digs up that joke and they use that against me. I can't, and they use it in a way to go, look at this guy, this is how he feels, and that's how he was like, I can't just go, look, man, I made this mistake. I don't think that way anymore. I've grown, I've become a better person, whatever. Because they don't want you to be a better person when they do that. They want you to still be that same guy. So they want to pin you to be that guy because they dug that up specifically to attack you and debilitate you. Because that's what it is. When they keep holding it over your head, it's just a war tactic. Because if you go, I'm my bad, right? Because this is what this is. This is a battle of public perception. If you go, my bad, I've grown and I've changed. People, as long as you're not still doing it, right? There's no evidence that you've put out stuff or have perpetuated that behavior recently. People, they can let it go. At the very least, logically, they can look at it and go, well, he ain't really done or said anything like that since this has changed. But if they don't let you do it,
I think it's a weird one because, and I even speak about this. I speak on cultural competence and the idea of like some things are disrespectful in some cultures and it's not in other cultures. Like because I hang out with Black people, I hang out with white people, I hang out with Caribbean people, Haitians, Mexicans, Dominicans, all of these different groups. And I'm going to step on some cultural toes. Like that's why I'm able to hang out with so many different people. It's not because I figured it out. It's because I realized I'm going to do it. And I just apologize genuinely when I do it. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. My bad. It's not the end of the world, but for some reason that hasn't translated online because it takes too long to explain that you've grown.
Yeah,
because
people don't want to see that you've grown. I really believe that once it gets to a point where they're weaponizing your past against you, it is not in their best interest that you have grown. That removes the sting of the attack, right? Like if I decide. Let's say you make a joke about Jewish people and that joke is cool or no one sees it or whatever, right? Point is it doesn't get brought up. And then in 2022, they go, you know what? I don't like Cam. I'm going to go find that Jewish joke I remember and I'm going to plaster it on. They screenshot it. So you can't delete it or nothing. Even if you have a Jewish wife now at some point, right? And you go to synagogue, you've converted. That's like the worst thing that could happen to them. And that diminishes the strength of their attack. Because it's not about correcting your behavior. It's not about you being a better person. It's not about a lesson. It's about let's use this.
Inflicting pain.
It's about inflicting pain. And to me that's problematic. Like look.
Of course it's problematic. I think it's only problematic. It is definitely problematic. And the people who are like perpetuating it and doing it are just doing it to be evil. None of us are perfect.
Right.
Look hard enough, you'll find something about me that I was doing comedy for years. I've said dumb things.
I'm sure you said something outrageous. You made
there's some things I've even said and that I didn't even know was offensive.
Right.
The producer of this studio, like the producer in the studio can attest to who I used to be. Like just saying inappropriate. And the thing is, when I would say it, I didn't know it was a lot of things I didn't think I thought we're all joking.
Right.
And we also, they knew I was joking, and no one corrected me because they did the same thing, and we had like an understanding, like, oh, we're terrible people together in this circle, but we don't mean any of these things. Like, but then it doesn't serve another purpose if I've changed or I've grown.
Yeah, not only that, you know, times of I'll be the first to admit kind of the social power of progressiveness. I'm not progressive, conservative, whatever. I merely look at what's practical and allows us to treat people in the best way possible. And a lot of times that means what we used to do or we used to accept as standard is no longer standard. You know, I'm not talking about comedy. I think there's a special kind of place for comedy, and I think comedy is unfairly attacked because we take rules for all things and try and put them on. We take rules for one thing and try to apply it to everywhere.
I would even say I don't think anyone's ever really complained about comedy. I think media has complained about comedy. I haven't really run into someone.
Oh no, you're right, but you know what? People are where do people learn to think? I really believe this. I wrote a thread on this on Twitter. I called it the media culture government cartel. That people learn the opinions they're supposed to have based on what the media decides to report, and the media is incentivized, but by their model, cost per mil. Like people just have the view; they don't have to buy anything. The media is incentivized to make something as negative as possible because of the way humans are designed with loss aversion bias. We're going to pay attention to something more negative. So if you can, you know, I remember the first time I realized this when the Trayvon Martin shooting happened. I was watching the news, and this before they like knew who Zimmerman was and everything. It was just a shooting. But the media, in their infinite wisdom about how to pimp a situation, they went, this was a black man shot by a white guy. It should have been just about a murder. All right, but a murder is murder, right? That's bad. But how can we make this murder worse, and how can we pull more attention to it? You know, let's focus on this. And that, you know, now that's not to say that we should not consider those elements, but we have to remember that the media is very much in the business. That's how it stays in business because news doesn't produce a thing to sell, right? There's no economic value in what it does in that sense. But you got a lot of attention, so you got to keep that attention coming. And what's the best way to do that? Well, they figured that out.
Yeah, that's why.
If it bleeds, it leads. That's where that comes from. What about the news?
Could you explain what negative loss bias is?
Okay, so loss aversion bias or negative bias attention. If you have to take, let's say your emotional baseline is a 0, and it can go negative where you feel bad or positive where you feel good, and you have two events, and they are the same absolute value from 0. Right? Let's say skinning your knee versus finding a nickel. Actually, we don't have to do that. We can say losing a nickel, finding a nickel. Two events, right? The loss is 5 in one, gain is 5 in another. You would expect it to feel about the same in terms of the absolute difference it makes in difference from your baseline emotions. You should feel just as bad as you feel just as good for finding 5. That is the logical thought process, but that's not what happens. You actually feel about twice as bad even though you lost the same amount as you gained feeling good.
I'll break that down easier. So when I lose a boxing match, I'll feel worse than I do when I'll be happy when I win one.
Right. And you'll feel a lot worse for that. And there are lots of theories about why that is. Largely the big one I think that I remember most clearly and makes the most sense is that if, let's pretend you're like an old caveman wandering through the Sahara trying to figure out how to survive, right? I just, through caves and Saharas together. I don't know if they go, or savannas together. And you need to, you come across two scenarios. One is a bush of some extra berries, delicious looking berries, right? And to your left, though, so to your right of these delicious berries, and to your left is this pool of stagnant water that smells like death. And it takes the same amount of energy to take a sip of this water as it does to eat one of those berries. Which one is going to make a bigger difference on your life? That stagnant water could kill you. Them extra berries might give you an extra hour of energy before you feel hungry. It behooves you to pay a lot more attention to that stagnant water than those berries. And so we think our brains have evolved roughly, like, in other words, things that can cause you pain tend to, if not entirely by definition, be negative. And so you're going to pay a lot more attention to that because, like, we were talking about,
we pay more attention to negative things.
Yeah.
Because for our safety, for our survival.
For our safety, for our survival. Yeah. All right. So we're going to pay way more attention to a news story where someone is on a high speed chase and gets killed versus somebody who rushes to the hospital to deliver, 7 babies.
So that's why the headlines are going to be bigger for the one who was for the murder or the gun.
Yeah. And the more negative and divisive you can make the headline, the more people are going to look.
Because it's what people are naturally drawn to. And this is when I made a realization. We're drawn to negative things.
Yep.
And all we do is and this, I just learned this, so I'm not saying I'm an expert at all. I'm just sharing my experience with it. And then I learned the terms on the way, but it's your RAS, your reticular
activating system. What you notice, what you're thinking about, you tend to notice more of it.
What you think about, you tend to know. So if you think about buying a yellow car, you're going to start seeing yellow cars.
Like, oh shit, everybody's got a yellow car.
Everybody's got a yellow car. Now, once I realized that, I was like, oh, let me see if I can play with that. So every morning I started my day by writing a list of 10 things I'm grateful for. And I would do it before I looked at my phone because I know every time I looked at my phone, it was something bad. So I trained myself to write 10 things I'm grateful for every morning. The reason why I realized this is because there's a lady who sells socks. That's I Am Awesome Socks. It's the business notes to self. And she puts affirmation on underwear, because you're more receptive to positive affirmations first thing in the morning. And I was like, oh, I'm doing this before I look at my phone, before I do anything. The gratitude's going to start my day. And I decided to do it I decided to do it. I didn't have an idea how long I was doing it for. It was a personal experiment. And it would take me, like, first of all, the first 10 days were easy. I'm grateful for my house, my car, my van, this, that. But after the first month, it started to be a little harder to find things to be grateful for.
Yeah.
But I continued doing it. So it would take me 20 to 30 minutes to kind of figure out 10 real things to be grateful for. And on the list, I'm not allowed to put anyone's name on the list.
Now, why is that?
No, I am. But unless I reach out to them that day and tell them that I'm grateful for them. If not, you can just start adding people that you don't mean. And I've reached out to you randomly just to tell you I appreciate you and how amazing I think you are.
Yeah, I just thought you was doing some weird vegan health thing, man, but I appreciate that.
And because imagine how many of your friendships and your relationships have just kind of withered away, and it's just not any beef or anything like that. You just kind of forget about each other. And this practice has allowed me to reach out to those people and like rekindle friendships that I kind of lost along the way. So that was another great part of this practice. And what I started to do, because I wanted to look at my phone first thing in the morning and I didn't want to wait 30 minutes, as crazy as that seems, I'm a human. I would look for things throughout my day to be grateful for and remember them to add them to my list.
Yep. And dude, this is like, people don't realize how much of their reality they create. In the pure sense of the word, like what's your reticular activating system, you get to look for, well, not you get to, you see what you're thinking about. There's a great twist on this experiment, or a twist on this concept in an experiment in a book called Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson. And he talks about if you tell yourself you're going to see a nickel or find money, you'll start finding money everywhere. Jay Ulcher has an exercise in his I think it's Choosing Yourself, where he goes every day for, in the morning, or we'll say the morning. I'm not sure if he said that. You wake up and you write down 10 ways you're going to make money. You start seeing ways to make money.
And I would say people do that, and I figured out what the difference is. You have to don't just write it, you have to feel it.
Yeah.
As crazy as that seems, you can't just write it. You have to feel it.
Well, I think when you write something down, it's a lot. It's cemented in your consciousness a lot more than if you just think it.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Because at the very least, when you write something down, this is why I think writing is so important. Actually, I read an article about this, why writing is so important. And one of the things I talk about is when you write something down, you take it from an intangible idea and you give it physical form. That might only be 2 dimensions on the paper, but that's a start. That's a big start. That's how blueprints for structure start.
More importantly, it's inflexible.
Right.
So I ask you a question and you kind of give me a kind of different answer. So if you ask me what I speak about as a speaker, and I'm like, well, I do speak on culture. I also speak on resilience and the mindset. And then someone else asks me what I speak on, I kind of give them answer. But if I have to write it down, I'm forced to think about it and figure out exactly, and it can't move around.
Yeah.
I have to have something concrete. And
it becomes very clear. And in this way, and think about the power of this we're talking about. It changes lives. It's changed my life. It changes your life. It changes anyone's life who uses it. I think Napoleon Hill talks about this in Think and Grow Rich. Like, you write down your goals and it makes a big difference in your life. You're much more likely to achieve them because you're looking for ways to achieve them, because you're manipulating the reticular activating system. Now think about this power you have, and that most people are not using it. They're actually doing worse than not using it. They're actively using it to hurt themselves.
You know how frustrating it is I found something that is life-changing and free. And then when I kind of share and I realized every time I shared it with someone, they made me feel like this crazy hippie person, or maybe that just might be my own personal insecurity, but I started posting it online. So I record myself doing it, doing my gratitude journal every morning, because I want people to see that, first of all, you can be a man and have a gratitude journal.
Yeah, I guess most guys probably do think that's a bit of a feminine idea.
Yeah, and I want young men to see, I want young black men to see, oh, maybe I should care about my feelings and care about mental health and care about self-care. And I make sure I look like I normally would look when I wake up, because I want people to see what this practice looks like. It's not hard at all, and it has literally changed my life for the better. I can't explain. And actually what prompted that was Think and Grow Rich.
There you go.
I was broke, and I've heard about this book so much, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to believe it. I have nothing. So I've got nothing to lose. And I was like, I'm going to follow everything this book says, and I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to believe it, because I'm not just going to write it and think it. I'm going to feel it. And I committed to it. And every morning first thing I would do is I would read a chapter of that book. And then it came down to every morning. After I finished it, I'd read about 15 pages every morning. But I did every exercise. I wrote down my goals. You've been to my bathroom. There's I committed wholeheartedly. And they said in the book, it's think about what you want. I'm like, money. I want and randomly, go ahead.
And dude, people think, I know I've always kind of thought this, but as I learn more, as I understand more, I really see how it works. I think people think when they hear these affirmations or these, law of attraction things, that I think you get 2 camps. You get the camp that's like, oh, that's crazy, that can never work. And then you get the other camp that's like, all I got to do is say a bunch of shit a bunch of times and I'll be rich. No. It doesn't. Neither one is correct. And I used to fall probably somewhere in camp 1, which is this is woo-woo nonsense. And then I learned about how the reticular activating system works, the RAS. And I said, ain't this some shit? They didn't really figure it out way before psychology, way before neuroscience confirmed it. We figured out that if you continually tell yourself something, you start seeing ways to make it happen. You start seeing if it is a thing, and you start seeing like, okay, I can make it a reality. Cause that's all it's doing. Like if I tell myself I want $1 million, I'll have $1 million. I'm not gonna like suddenly, find it. Now, if your mind's twisted, you might find a gun across the street from a bank, with the serial number filed off and a ski mask.
Let me explain a crazy story. All right. When I was in high school, my boxing gym was 6 miles from my high school. Right. And not like when your parents tell you they walk 10 miles uphill in the snow to school and 10 miles back uphill home. Like, it was 6.3 miles, and it would take me about 3.5 hours to make that walk. And every day at 3:00, I would have to walk that. It was like a 3-hour walk. And this was back before your phone had music. So, and I didn't have money for batteries in my MP3 player. And I was afraid if I walked to the gym, I would hear my own thoughts. So I would always drown out my thoughts. And the thoughts were always negative. And I was sad. And I didn't know depression was a thing, but I was probably depressed.
Yeah.
So I would always listen to music to drown out my thoughts. And I didn't have music for these 3-hour walks. So it's 15 hours a week I would have to listen to my thoughts. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to listen to something, I'm going to put my own thoughts in there. And if I'm going to tell myself anything, I might as well tell myself I'm amazing. And I would walk to the gym every day and literally think about all the fights I would win. I'm going to win all of nationals, and all these big muscle dudes, they're going to be afraid of me. And this is little old chubby Cam. And people would see me walking to the gym, and I knew they looked at me like a weirdo because I wasn't walking to them. I was walking to the gym as a chubby 16-year-old, like for no reason. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is what I have to do. 1 + 2 is 3. 3 is national championships. I am 1. I need to 2. This is just a part of my 2. I don't care what 2 is. It might be inconvenient sometimes. But what was so powerful is those 15 hours a week, I just told myself how amazing I am. And after a while, I didn't have to tell myself anymore.
Yep.
And granted, it did get away from me for a little bit. And I did get a little cocky, and I was a little self-absorbed. And probably about like 2010, 2012 humbled me. When I got to spend and kicked off the Olympic team, that brought me back down. But telling myself I was amazing all the time, if you're having issues, you can tell yourself, listen, I will always tell myself how awesome I am. There's going to be people in life who will be there to tell you that you're not good enough.
Oh, tons of people. You're never going to.
I'm not going to join that party. If I can tell myself anything in the world, why won't I tell myself I'm awesome?
And here's something people forget. Perception is reality, but perception is not the reality. And what I mean by that is you can tell yourself whatever you want to tell yourself. You really do. You have control of this voice. And to not use it is the same as abusing it, because it is always going to, because of what we talked about with loss aversion bias, it's always going to fill itself with something negative. It's just easier for you to focus on negative stuff. That's just how we're designed as humans. Yeah. So you got to take like real control and start bullshitting yourself. You got to start telling a lot of yourself about how cool and how great the world is. And then, and this is key, because it's not like you were just telling yourself, I'm awesome, and then chilling at the house. You're on your way to a boxing gym. That's real work you got to put in. That's real stuff you got to do. Getting real feedback and real world activity to shape the future. If you had just been doing it, playing video games, right? Who knows? Probably nothing, right? But you end up going and showing up and doing the work, and it is a big difference.
And walking to the gym 3 hours, thinking about how amazing I am and how I'm going to win. Those moments, like in fights where it's like, ooh, do I have that little bit of left in me? That's already in the tank. It's not even my endurance. It's not even my cardio. It's the fact that I know I've sacrificed 3 hours walking, 15 hours a week. You think I'm going to lose to you?
Right.
You weren't willing to do this. No, I'm supposed to win. So when I enter the ring, people always say, you're so cocky. No, I think I'm supposed to win because I did everything in my power to win. And if you don't think you're supposed to win, you didn't do everything in your power.
You don't believe it. I used to, you know what my remedy was when I fought? My remedy for feeling nervous, and I would feel nervous or feel worried all the time. It's just, it's natural. But the cool thing about fighting is you have to do something about that. So maybe there was a point in time in the life of Ed Lattimore where I had this thing called anxiety. I certainly don't have it and haven't had it in a long time if I ever had it. All right. But the thing I used to do when I would feel like I'm not ready for the fight, I'm inadequate, I'd just go train some more. What else can I do? I looked at that signal, I interpreted those negative feelings, those feelings of doubt. I interpreted those as a sign that I didn't feel like I was ready enough. So I just get myself to the point where I was ready. Now, because I had a high standard for how I approached my training and did things in life, my bar for being ready was I almost never felt ready. But there was a time where I went, well, I got to be ready, because if I ain't, what am I going to do out here? So at some point, that's taking advantage of that voice for me. I'm going to start like, all right, now, but it work. Let's tell a story. All right, because I think it can get dangerous, and this is what I want to talk about here. I think that's a great strategy. I think it's going to do a lot more good than it will bad. But let's talk about the bad that it can do. If a guy starts lying to himself and he's not willing to go do the work, walk into the ring thinking he the shit, he ain't spar, he ain't done anything. He's power belief it's going to carry me. It's going to carry me. Cam said it's going to carry me, and we saw how Cam fight.
Yeah, you are the car, right? You are the car. Your belief is the engine.
The belief is the engine.
The work you put in is the gas.
Okay. So what you're saying, I'm gonna take it. What you're saying is it is useful and it is vital. But it's not enough. It's a necessary but not sufficient condition. You have to believe in yourself. You have to.
I've seen guys who work out and they're in the best shape. They're in the gym. They're training. But when they get to the fight, they have fear of fatigue. They're so afraid to get tired in the ring. They don't give it their all.
Those gym fighters, those guys, they're the best at everything but the fight.
They have the gas, they have the car, but they don't have any engine.
Right. And on top of that, like I always say, what I used to say, everybody's a star. This is from football. Everyone's a star when there's no pads on, right? When we're running through drills and training and there's nothing on the line. And I think there's a certain class of person. They just cannot take risk. And this manifests in I think what people call fear of success, which I think is bullshit personally. In theory, in application, what I think is happening is people want a guarantee. They want to go, if I do this, I'm going to get that.
Hey, I'll give you a guarantee. What's
your guarantee you going to give me?
If you can fail without being discouraged, success is inevitable.
Right, but what is failure? Failure is super painful, and to fail almost by, failure is a function of risk. Because if there's no risk of success, that's a weird way to put it. If there is no chance of success, then there's no
risk
failure.
Of failure.
Right.
No chance of success to no risk.
No risk of failure. So if you're afraid of taking these risks, some people correctly identify it. I'm just afraid of taking risk. But I think there's a small subset that they can't admit that to themselves, and so they call it a fear of success. But we're still talking about the same thing. We're talking about an outcome that's not guaranteed. Success isn't as guaranteed any more than failure is. But what you can do with your actions is you put the odds of success in your failure. You reduce the chance of failure. Okay? And what's the cool thing about probability, right? I never thought about this until now, but this is cool, right? The cool thing about probability is when we talk about, there's a 1 in 2 chance, or there's a 1 in 6 chance. We're talking about an individual event, right? But what we're really saying is that if we do this an infinite number of times, you should be successful on average 1 out of 6 times. And the idea is to pick these events that you do, these things that you do, that when you are successful that one time, the return is so disproportional to the effort put in that your life changes. You ain't got to be right all the time. You just got to be right 1 or 2 times.
Yeah, or
it's got to be big.
Or you could take a different approach. I took the quantity approach.
And check it out. When you take the quantity approach, this is one of my favorite ideas. If your batting average, how you gonna hit more home runs? First, how you gonna hit more home runs? Well, you either can swing harder or swing more often. And why? Because if your batting average is fixed, let's say 30%, and you can't do anything to improve that. The only way you're going to be able to crack more ones out the park, you got to swing more. So the 30% is now 30% of 400 instead of 100. That's going to give you 4 times the home runs, 4 times the potential for home runs. But don't be that wants to do that work because it's not guaranteed. It's exhausting.
And I know 1 + 2 = 3. If I want 3, I need 2.
And
right?
and
I'm willing to do anything for the 2.
And that means keep trying, keep swinging the bat because eventually you're gonna crack it, and when you got it, now you got your 2.
And I may not be the best. I'm like in boxing. If you look at me on paper, like size wise, the strength, everything, I wasn't supposed to be successful. But what I did was I drowned everyone with output. You're not gonna outwork me.
I want to be fair here. You can't see it because he's sitting down. Cam is 6'3", so let's not talk about the size thing.
when we're talking about like how guys are built, like okay, when we met in 2011, when we were living together in 2011, I was at 36% body fat.
Well, sure, but that's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah, no. But the thing is, I'm not supposed to have been successful. Like, yeah, but I just thought I should have been. Okay,
that's I'll take that. Yeah, you think you should be, and so you go and perform and do these things, and I don't want to diminish the role of your skill set and natural.
Neither do I. I think I'm also. But
okay, but this is a vital part because if you, dude, it doesn't matter how good of a shot you are. If you can't execute or you're so nervous when you pull the trigger that your hands are shaking, it doesn't matter. This is an important part, the up here, and by extension in here. But the heart and the mind and all, and some people use those interchangeably. But to me, the distinction between those two intangibles is I can't take your heart away by what I think, right? If you got the will, like if you're gonna get up off the pavement after I knock you down, it has nothing to do with thinking you're a winner or a loser. We were just talking about this. Some fighters, they can just go out there and take them lickings and keep going back. And I don't know if I got that kind of heart to just keep getting dropped. I'd be like, oh, maybe this ain't for me. That's a heart thing. Now, mentally, if I'm going to go out there and think that I can win those fights despite being dropped, maybe that's more of a mind thing, right? That's kind of the difference I put it.
I would say mentally to the heart thing, what I would do when a fighter, when I would get in his head or I would slip a punch and not hit him, even though I can, but just look at him and smile. That's me taking his heart away. I'm going to quote Jeremiah Graziano. I stole this line from him. I say that's taking a man's soul.
Yeah.
Because when it happens, and it happens in the port, usually at the end of the fight, and an involuntary exhale, and that's his soul leaving his body. That's when he realized, like, well, he's not going to hurt me, but I don't think I can win.
Yeah, and that's it's interesting because I remember when we fought, which is funny. You meet somebody and you fight him, and then you end up doing a podcast with them
and living with them.
Life is weird that way, right? When we fought, I don't remember feeling frustrated in that sense. I remember just thinking that you had just had more time and give me enough time and I will figure out what I can do. But right now you got me at a different point. I do remember we knocking you down. I don't remember if you fell though. I can't.
Oh, so another thing that I do in fighting, I'm always on the floor. I'm always rolling around. And anytime like I get in, like the Dominic Brazil, I fought him a bunch of times. The dude's like 6'6".
6'6". Huge, 6'6".
Man. He's like 250, 260. You think I'm going to wrestle with him? So as soon as he gets close, I just collapse to the floor.
That's funny.
And he tries to hold me again, I'll collapse the floor. And then the ref will come over and say something. The ref will look at me on the floor and tell me to get up. I'll say, you need to tell him to stop holding me. And the ref is going to, because there's nothing, I'm pushing buttons at this point because there's nothing the ref can really do with this. You can't disqualify me for that. So I'll eventually get up. But now the ref is very cautious of him touching me now.
Yeah, it's a weird mental game. I think about that in comparison when I fought Dominic as an amateur. I remember that was the first time I fought somebody that much bigger than me. Like, that's a memory that stands out to me, is when we stood into the center of the ring, and he knows how much bigger he was than me because he put his hands up. I never raised my hands at the beginning of a fight, to show the crowd. He did it, and that with wingspan and height, it was like 7 feet tall. I'm like, this is crazy. This is what I gotta. But I'm sitting there thinking, because I have heart. I don't have. I think your mindset about the sport is completely different than mine. But I had a big heart. As two different coaches said, you don't understand how to take a step backwards. And once I learned how to do that just for setup, that really changed how I fought. But I remember I just had the charge. I was just charging for it, always standing his chest, popping, throwing shots. And which is another way entirely to. That's the Sean Porter style of messing guys up, and that's why I'm a big fan of Sean Porter, because that's some guys they take it that way, man. They go, I'm gonna beat you. I'm gonna be so relentless and so smothering that you're going to question if I'm even human.
Well, you're gonna take a bunch of steps with me.
Yeah, right. Like, either way, we're gonna fight my way. They went out and fight your way, and my way is dirty and ugly.
And there's been guys who will stop taking steps forward purposely and just stand there, and I will stand there at a distance. You think this is a waiting game? The clock is going.
Yeah,
I'm already up on points.
So you have to do something.
You have to attack me, and that's what I want you. All I do is train for you to attack me.
Like, and that's the mindset that that comes with all this.
And I think if I were to have this mindset with Dominic Brazil's body,
well, yeah, you'd be a.
But I couldn't, and also if I turn pro and of course Chris Bird did it, and I'm sure I could, but risk for reward, not.
Yeah, but you're bigger than Chris Bird. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. Chris, he's like 170 now.
Well, you don't have to. People don't realize, man. That's the lifestyle. I remember one of the things I remember is I remember being.
Once he's vegan, he's juicing, he's looking amazing.
Well, you do. You change your life.
Yeah.
Change your life and do it all. And then, some people, they carry that mindset into other things, not just boxing. That's I think that's a cool idea, is to dive further on, perhaps, is, the way that boxing mindset, man, it really makes anything possible. I believe not everyone does, but everyone is capable. If you have any type of success in boxing, real life ain't shit for you,
bro. The amount of, because I did boxing. I mean, I would take calls on a day notice. I was driving to Minnesota and was driving through Iowa, and Facebook showed someone I was in town and they needed a heavyweight, and then I fought Donovan Dennis that night.
I remember Donovan Dennis. That was
a great dude.
Yeah, real cool guy.
But that's how I was always fight ready. I keep a mouthpiece in my glove box.
I stay with the thing.
I stay with the thing on me.
But yeah, this has been a great discussion about mindset and how it really contributes to your success. And if you guys appreciated this episode of Life After Fight podcast, man, I hope you like it, you share it, you subscribe. You let somebody listen to this who's got a mindset issue or they need to get right up here. Because when you get right up here, everything else comes together. It's super easy. But it's the hardest place. But you get it done, and then
once you get up there, there's another barrier.
What's that?
Your ego is going to lie to you and tell you don't need to fix certain things.
Oh, man.
But that's for another time.
That's for another time. That ego thing is a big deal. But thank you, guys.